Can someone please check that they can hear me?
We
I
can hear
hear
you.
This is Diane Byjay.
I hear you, Diane.
Yes, I can hear you as well.
Paul, did you just say something? Oh, Keith. I can't
Yes,
hear
we can hear you.
anybody.
We can hear you.
Don't forget to unmute me. Got it. Get closest to-
You can hear me, but I can't hear you. I'm gonna try to log on my phone.
People are muted. That's why you can't hear right now. They probably haven't, they haven't started the meeting yet.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I think you're.
I can hear everyone talking.
We were all muted.
I don't think Ms. Baja can hear us, though. She's not responding.
Diane, you're muted. That's why you can't talk.
All right, Liz, 9:30, you can get started.
Good morning. My name is Liz Kukla. I'm the Secretary of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm going to read the preamble for you this morning, this Monday, December 12th, 2022. In compliance with notification requirements of the city's open meeting law in section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinances of Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting have the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop.
I'm not getting in on my phone. Is it possible you can send the link to me to the dsbija@gmail.com email? That is already on my phone. Sorry for interrupting. Oh, I can hear.
You can hear us now?
I can hear now. We're good. Thank you.
In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting have the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Please note that call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube for public view. We have provided a link to the meeting for those who wish to speak in a particular case via our website and email. All requests to speak on a particular matter have been considered. We've also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Ms. Bates,
Yes.
I am present.
Ms. Brown,
Present.
Ms. Holzer,
Present.
Ms. Britt,
Here.
and Ms. Roca. I don't see her.
She may or may not be here later.
She sent an email.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Chair, we have a quorum with 4 members.
Great, thank you. So although we have 4, if you get a 2-2 vote, your case won't go anywhere. So when your case gets called, you are allowed to ask for a postponement until we have a full complement. So just letting you know that. So if your case gets called and you want to postpone, let us know. Okay, so no postponements today?
That is correct.
Oh, all right. Maurice, do we have any council people on?
Yes, we have Councilman Slife, who I believe was on first, and then I see we have Councilman Griffin, who just joined us.
All right, we'll start with Councilman Slife's cases. Ms. Holzer?
Sounds good. It looks like we'll be starting then with calendar number 22-216. All right. So calendar number 22-216. Should I wait until we have the PowerPoint up? I'll give it a second. Thank
There we
you.
go.
This is at 14750 Trisket Road. Keith Seltzer proposes to erect a 20-foot by 20-foot, 1-story frame detached gable pole barn storage building in a B1 two-family residential district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there is one. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
Morning. I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand. Reply, I do. State your name and your address, please.
Diane Bijay, New Creation Builders, 818 East 73rd, Cleveland, Ohio, 44103.
I do. Keith Salzer, 14750 Trisket, Cleveland.
Anyone else, Councilman, do you plan to testify?
Yes. Do I need to be sworn in, or am I the city?
Yes, you need to be sworn in, sir. You state your name, your address, and say I do.
Charles Slife, 601 Lakeside Avenue, Cleveland. I do.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chair.
Thank you. History of the property, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's been no change in the zoning since 1929. We didn't find anything in our Records Administration Office for this address. We did find in our more recent history in our Acela system that in 1989, a permit was issued to demolish a 20 by 22 garage on the property. And then in 1995, a permit was issued to erect a new garage. And then, Madam Chair, in 2004, a permit was issued to install approximately 116 linear feet of 5-foot-high vinyl fence. And there are no variances on file and nothing of note in the most recent history. Thank you.
Thank you. Legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting an area variance from the accessory structure regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the area variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you. Who'll be the spokesperson for this case?
Am I the spokesperson for my property, I guess, Keith Sulzer?
Okay, go ahead and present the case.
Yeah, basically, my property is about, almost 700 feet deep. The area or the building I want to put up, would be for storage of, lawn equipment. I obviously have a big lawn, with some woods in the back. So I have a lot of trees that I take down, to build a structure on the back half of the property would mean I'd have to walk a football field length to get to it, and it wouldn't be reasonable. There's plenty of room between my house and the house next door. With this building, there'd be another almost 30 feet between my house, my storage building, and the house next door. And I'm asking for a variance so I can store my lawn equipment into this building.
All right, thank you. Ms. Bajay, do you want to add anything to that? I don't hear anything from her. I'll go to the councilman.
Thank you. I support the variance. I think, as you can tell from the aerial, this is not your typical Cleveland lot. If a typical Cleveland lot's about 120 foot deep, then we're expecting garage and accessory structures at least 60 feet from the right of way. This is actually 70 feet from the right of way. So it's a comparable, if not further distance, but to have it in the back half of the property, I think in this case, we all see why that's a hardship. So I asked for the support. I did submit a letter to the same.
All right, thank you, Councilman. City Planning?
Yeah, hi, this is Maurice Rowland, City Planning. Yeah, I think this is a perfect example of where there definitely is a practical difficulty with locating this garage all the way in the back. The only question I have is, and I had sent this to Diane, but I never got an answer, is which way is the garage actually facing? Because there is no driveway to the front. Is the garage door facing to the front, to the side, to the back?
It is to the front.
No, excuse me, the garage door will face to the back of the yard. So
Okay.
my purpose would be to get the equipment out of the garage, facing the back. So I don't want the garage door facing the street. I don't think that would look as good.
I'll note that change.
Great.
Yeah. And
Great.
so, yeah,
That's exactly what we.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we were thinking. So you read our minds. That's perfect. We definitely recommend approval on this.
All right, level one and plan comes together. All right, board. Any questions or comments?
Hearing no questions or comments from my colleagues, Madam Chair, I'll go with the motion. And we do definitely like when a plan comes together. And the homeowner is really fortunate to have such a large lot in that area of the city. So the councilman supports, city planning supports. So I move that we go ahead and approve the variance for this.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Member Brown, I second.
Ms. Brown with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Ms. Holzer,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Babe,
Yes.
Ms. Britt.
Yes.
Calendar number 22-216 is granted. It'll be ratified when we meet next year, the Tuesday, January 3rd. Thank you.
You threw me off with that. I knew what you meant, but you're like, next year. Okay.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. All right. Moving on to, I believe the councilman has another case.
Sounds good. We have calendar number 22-193. This is at 15736 Lorraine Avenue, also known as 15722 Lorraine Avenue. Annette Packus proposes to establish use as an assembly, meeting, and party venue in a C2 local retail business district and a pedestrian retail overlay district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances, as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there are two. This case was originally postponed on November 14th at the request of the councilman to allow time for further community review. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand, reply, I do, state your name and your address, please.
I do. Leon Sampat, 22082 Lorraine Road, Fairview Park, Ohio.
Could you repeat your name, sir?
Leon Sampat.
Okay, thank you.
I do too. My name is Dan Packus. I represent my mother, who's Annette Packus. My address is, well, you can still use hers, 25777 Yeoman Drive, Westlake, Ohio.
I do also. My name is Steve Lorenz, 3657 West 159th Street in Cleveland.
I do. My name is Prashana Brown, the leasee at 15736 Lorraine Avenue.
I do. Assunta Susan Carino, 3719 Melbourne Avenue, Cleveland 44111. I do.
I do. Joyce Lashevsky, 3711 Melbourne Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio.
I do. Gail Liebenguth, 3730 Melbourne Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio.
I do. John Lashewski, 3711 Melbourne Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio.
And I do. Councilman Slife, 601 Lakeside Avenue, Cleveland.
I do. Rosemary Moudry, 17407 Lorraine Avenue.
I do. Brett Warden, 3711 Melbourne Avenue.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you. History of the property, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This property was originally zoned general retail in 1929. In 2010, it was changed to the local retail business district and the pedestrian retail overlay district. In our records administration office, we found very little, only that in 1936, a permit was issued to install a projecting business sign. In 1951, another sign was installed, and it was mentioning a dry cleaning business on site. There is one violation notice regarding unauthorized use at this address that was issued in October of 2021. You may remember also that in calendar number 21-176, a variance was requested for a very similar use at the site. There was extensive testimony, but ultimately this case was withdrawn. And that's all that I have for you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting a use variance and an area variance from the parking regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the use variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will result in an unnecessary hardship particular to the property such that there will be no economically feasible use of the property without the variance, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code. To obtain the area variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
All right, thank you. So before we begin testimony, I do have some ground rules because of the number of people that have signed up. So you'll get a chance to say what you need to say about the case, but we have some ground rules. We run a respectful meeting here. So there will be no personal attacks on any other person, the appellant or any other person testifying. You'll need to hear the full history of the neighborhood and what's going on there. We will keep our comments directly to the variances that are at hand. And if I feel like you're talking too long, I will ask you to wrap it up. So I just want to make sure we run a respectful meeting here. And if I feel like anyone's getting out of hand, I will let you know. So with that being said, who will be the spokesperson for this case?
Leon
Is that-
Sampat, I
Leon?
believe the owner and the property owner are also online too.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
yes, we are looking at the space to the far left on that strip center. It's approximately 2,445 square feet. The business owner is looking to provide a place to have small gatherings. There is, I think the property owner could talk a little bit more about this, but there is agreements for parking across the street. It's just verbal, but for non-business hours, when they're not in using their parking lot, they will allow these owners to utilize that parking. Dan, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
The Seven Seas across the street, my understanding is.
Who's speaking?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Dan Packus.
Okay.
I apologize. Seven Seas has a written agreement for half their parking to be used by the bar next door. There's a verbal agreement, my understanding, for using the other half when Seven Seas is closed for whatever the suites was looking to use for, and then the remainder of the parking being with street parking. That is my understanding at this point.
Okay, so you looking to do a party center, so you're getting written up for that it's not permitted in local retail, and something about the parking area. So who's ever running the business, can you just tell us more about what'll be going on there? What are the hours of operation? Those kind of things.
Yes, I'm Prashana Brown, and I'm leasing the space, Lee Sweets Events. I'm trying to use it for small gatherings, approximately no more than 45 to 50 guests. The type of events that we will be running there will be mostly business meetings for people that want to hold meetings for their small groups of employees, some baby showers, small, some engagement parties, some retirement parties, and some milestone gatherings. Our orders of operation would be 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Most operating days are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and usually my clients don't start their events till about 4:30, 5 o'clock. So mainly Monday through Thursday, there'll pretty much be no type of business being established, not unless it's a business meeting. And most of my business meetings roughly come out to about 15 people, no more than that, 12 to 15 people. What else do I want to elaborate on? Yes, as far as the parking, there was a verbal agreement with the owner of Seven Seas. He did not mind for me to use the other half of his parking lot after 4 o'clock when he closed. He said it wasn't no problem. The bar that was leasing the other space has burnt out, and I don't know for a fact if they're going to reopen business. So now I'll be able to talk to the owner of Seven Seas to try initiate a written agreement now, since that business is no longer open, to use both sides.
Okay, thank you. And are you allowing alcohol on the premises?
No, as stated in my agreement, I'm not sure if you guys got a copy. We do not allow no alcohol at the use. We do also have on-site security and a staff of 5 employees that helps out to initiate like no traffic in front of the building. So there's no standing in front of the building. We do have I have a small like space in the back. If they smoke cigarettes, they can smoke cigarettes, but we do not allow any alcohol. If we catch any alcohol on the premises that's stated in my agreement, we will shut down your event and ask you to leave without any refund or any initial. Like, those are the rules. No alcohol at all.
All right, thank you. Okay, anyone else from the project team that needs to speak? Okay, none. First name I have here is Mr. Lorenz.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to just kind of read into the record what I sent over to you, because I understand that not all of these letters are read by the board members, or you don't have time to read them. So I'm opposed to the granting of the variance as requested. My reasoning is as follows. West Park does not need another event or party center. Granting a variance to shoehorn another one in makes no sense. The following venues are all available for events and parties. Most are less than a mile from Les Suites, and all are within 2 miles. And then I listed 12 different places in a close proximity to Les Suites that are available for parties and events. Secondly, the applicant has not submitted a written parking plan. The bar next door that burned down, my understanding is they have insurance and plan to reopen, so I don't think that other piece of the parking will be available to her. She has stated publicly that she will be relying on street parking for most of her guests. Parking is already at a premium due to the number of double houses and apartment buildings. This creates issues on the immediate side streets where I live and own property. Previous events have entailed large numbers of people parking on the side streets. They tend to all leave at once, causing boisterous groups coming down the streets to their cars. This disturbs the enjoyment of the residential properties. The applicant has stated that she does not stay open past 10:30. However, that has not been the case previously. If the variance is granted, there is no stipulation of hours or regarding the use of alcohol going forward. Social media posts made by Les Suites do not match her public statements. Finally, the most important reason to deny the variance is the potential future uses. The difference in uses allowed between local retail and general retail zoning are significant. The property owner shows no regard in renting to uses outside the existing zoning. Occupancy permits are not part of their normal course of business. We do not trust the property owner to follow the rules, as they have ignored them in the past, as they did in this case. Once the variance is granted, the neighborhood is powerless to address improper uses. At a recent neighborhood meeting organized by Councilman Slife, there was universal opposition to the variance by nearby residents. I strongly request that the Board of Zoning Appeals deny this request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next I have Ms. Carino.
Good morning. I don't know if you guys just want me to address the parking part or the whole reasoning of what I feel that this is not a good decision to vote a variance appeal in.
Yeah, you need to address the variances that are before us. So it is to become a assembly center and parking. So you can make your comments toward those two.
Well, my email I sent you guys is pretty lengthy. If you'd like me to I could read it.
No, don't read the whole thing. You can sum it up. Give us what your summary is of the letter you submitted.
I'm opposed to the granting of the variance. I asked for clarification on why the address of 15722 Lorraine is written on the appeal. I see that an AK, there was an AKA also placed on one of the mailers, but this adds to my concern of how quickly and loosely the appeal is being addressed again. I raise this because I see that it could leave the door open for 2 of the properties of the 6 units on the property seeking a variance. I ask a correction be recorded and made that 1 unit is seeking a variance, and that is 15736 Lorraine for this. I can double down and repeat all the valid reasons that my neighbors have stated throughout these meetings, but I won't. As Steve mentioned, the zoning variances are permanent and they alter the allowed use of the property. And in the future, we have no say of what can go in there or what business would be run. I went through each of the reasons that the applicant has to prove that a variance should be granted, and I don't see where any of those have been proven. I know that that's a high traffic area with emergency vehicles going up and down Lorraine. And also when cars are parked illegally on the street or on the sidewalk, it's hard to make a left as normally. And now it's hard to make a right off of my street because of the parking. And as Steve stated as well, in the past, these events have not been limited to the small amount that has been stated in the record today. And the fact that Thursday, Friday, and like the weekend hours of when her business will run are when we're home most of the day, the working families, and that will affect our lifestyle. As I'm trying to do yard work in the evenings and trying to park my car or doing things, it's hard, and my apron of my driveway has been blocked many times. I really don't understand. There's no dumpster on site. The narrow driveway going into the 12 parking spots that the unit has for all 6 of its units. The property only has 12 parking spots. So there's no spots for a private dumpster company to go in and out of there with a narrow driveway. Everybody has to unload their equipment and stuff, parking illegally on the sidewalk. I mean, there are so many reasons why this shouldn't be done that I'm surprised that we're here again today, because last year there was nothing changed. I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No, that's all right. Thank you very much. Okay, next I have Joyce. I didn't catch your last name, so I apologize.
Hi, Joyce Lashevsky. It's actually everything that Susie and Steve said. We submitted some paperwork with basically the same issues. So I'm going to just pass from there to the next one. My husband probably is next.
He is actually. So you want to defer to him or?
Yes, yes, because it's basically the same thing. We sent in some, our information, and I'm not sure if he has anything more to add. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Mr. John
Hi,
Lashevsky, you want to join in?
Yes, this is John Lashevsky. I'd like to just reiterate what Steve and Susie, brought up. And one of the main points I see is of opposing the variance is also the uncertainty of like future tenants. If we change this now, it just leaves us open to a lot of problems in the future for whoever. Any type of a business can probably go in there because of the zoning change. Also, my concern, like with Susie, was, as far as access to the back of the building with a small driveway and like I noticed yesterday there's like no dumpster in the back of the building. There's trash bags just stacked up behind the building. And how do you have normal service for trash pickup? Emergency vehicles getting back there in case there was a problem with 45 people, being in that building, and it's some type of an accident happening or fire. What about also, is there anything in writing for a business model that actually states you're going to limit the amount of people to 45? What happens if you put in another restroom and all of a sudden I'm going to have venues of 65 to 85 people? I just feel there's a lot of vague problems that have been raised by everyone in the community, including the parking and congestion on the street alone. And, we have a lot of emergency vehicles going up and down Lorraine Avenue from other municipalities now since Lakewood Hospital closed. A lot of extra traffic going to Fairview Hospital, the fire station. I just don't see that there's a set business plan that we can actually address and say, okay, these are the limits. This is what's going to happen. And we have parking agreements in writing. The bar may reopen, so you can't say, well, I'm going to go to the owner of Seven Seas and ask for all the parking spaces now. We can't have, 2 sets of rules. We have to have something in writing that's concrete. So that's the main reason why I oppose the variance, and my wife and I also. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Gail?
Hi there. This is a little long, but I'm going to try to sum it up pretty quickly. I am opposed to the zoning changes. I have owned and lived in my home for over 30 years, and this business is directly next to my property. The parking, again, for this party center is non-existent. They do not have the dedicated parking spaces to accommodate a large number of guests all showing up around the same time. This property and the surrounding streets cannot handle all that traffic at one time. It's dangerous. There have been double parked cars on the sidewalk of Lorraine Avenue, and that is dangerous. This property is not equipped for a party center, and it is not an added benefit to this community. Social media posts suggest that it can hold up to as many as 85 guests, and that would be dangerous. It was also mentioned last week at the neighborhood meeting that they were in the process of possibly adding another bathroom so that the property was up to code to hold more guests. So are they really planning on it just being 45 or 50 guests? I'd also like to mention that the business owner was cited by the Building and Housing Department that they were not allowed to operate due to the zoning. And even with that knowledge, the events continued multiple times. And that was also stated at the neighborhood meeting. The noise coming out of the back of this property at 1 or 2 a.m. has been loud enough to wake up my household. This is not acceptable, and it's really very inconsiderate. The applicant has stated that these events don't go past 10:30. That is not the case. And I have witnessed firsthand with multiple events, not one time, but multiple times, lasting until 1 or 2 a.m. If this variance is granted, there's no way to control the hours or the use of alcohol. Our lives and these issues that I have presented are real. They've already happened on multiple occasions, and the enjoyment of my property has been altered greatly. It's not a good addition for our community. The property owner appears to have little respect for the current zoning regulations and occupancy requirements for this building. He leased this property for a business knowing it's not permitted by the current zoning laws. A responsible property owner does not do that. He has no regard to follow the rules and cannot be trusted. Please, I ask you, lay eyes on this property. There is a reason it's never been zoned for anything but a storefront. It is no way appropriate for a party center. And there are more than enough properties already equipped to function as that. The property owner and landlord has stated at the neighborhood meeting he would allow the lease to be broken if this was not approved. This business would be free to find a more appropriate property without any financial repercussions. Please, I'm asking you to deny these variances and take into consideration the neighbors and the other businesses. This is our home, and these are real. These issues are real. They are not hypothetical, and they've happened on multiple occasions, not once or 4 times, multiple occasions. Please, I'm asking you to take all this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next I have Mr. Warden.
Yeah, hello. This is Brett Warden on Melbourne. I grew up here, but I've been gone about 11 years, and I remember even before I left that the area has always been kind of congested, parking issues, leading to people parking on our residential streets, which leads to more problems. Like this morning with leave pickup, we got cars parked around, and inevitably it's just going to happen. It doesn't seem like to me that I'll mirror what everyone else said. The party center. I mean, there's plenty of places to get together within this area, already. Alcohol and other things aside, and I can't say much for the history of the business owner. I don't, I wasn't here for whatever previously had happened, but regardless of whether it did or didn't, I still don't agree that it's a good idea. Space constraints. It's already kind of loud around here. And I've seen this kind of thing happen in Vegas, where they over the last 11 years I lived there, they changed some kind of zoning thing for one business, then it wouldn't work out, and then a new business would come in and change the whole dynamic of the neighborhood and screw it up. And instead of being kind of peaceful, it becomes even worse with traffic and noise. And there's a lot of houses on this map if you look, a lot. So I kind of stand with everyone when everyone else opposed to this, that maybe this party center would be better suited in another spot with less houses. I don't want to straight deny somebody the right to own a business and try to make it work, but I just don't think this is the right spot for it. And that's all I got.
All right, thank you. I have Rosemary next. From the CDC, maybe?
I'd like to go ahead and defer to the councilman first, and then I can speak if additional is needed.
Okay, Councilman, are you okay with that?
That's fine, and I also submitted a letter. It's a bit lengthy, so I'm going to read some of it, but not all of it. My opposition to this variance is narrowly focused and related specifically to Chapter 329 of the Codified Ordinances, which regulates the Board of Zoning Appeals. The codified ordinances establish clearly which conditions must be met for the board to exercise its variance powers. Section 329.03b speaks to the limitation of the board's variance powers and states, and I won't read what's in italics verbatim, but essentially there's a practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship that's peculiar to the premises that differentiates it from other premises in the same district, and that refusing the variance will deprive the owner of substantial property rights. For the sake of argument, consider the Variety Theater at 118th Street in Lorraine, which is also in a local retail zoning district. At this time, that building does not operate as a theater and presumably would need a variance to reestablish its historic assembly use. In arguing for that variance, it would be very easy for that appellant to demonstrate the need for the variance within the confines of the code. The building is easily differentiated from more typical commercial structures, and denying that variance would deny that owner a substantial property right to use a theater as a theater. In contrast, the appellant in calendar number 22193 cannot demonstrate a credible hardship. 15736 Lorraine is one of 6 retail units located in one common structure on one parcel. Minor differences in the units aside, the 6 units are comparable to each other and to other retail spaces located along this stretch of Lorraine. Within the same building as the suites, there is a tailor, a chiropractor, a driving school, and a barber shop. All of these are legal uses in a local retail district. In seeking a variance, the appellant is arguing that Unit 6, though indistinguishable from other retail spaces on the same property, is uniquely unable to conform to the zoning code. This defies logic. During a December 7th community meeting, a representative of the appellant was asked by the community if the property would be leased to other event businesses in the event that these variances are approved and the space becomes vacant in the future. The representative suggested a preference for retail or office uses to avoid additional zoning issues. In effect, the representative concurs that this property has no peculiarity that requires a zoning variance. This calendar number is not an example of the zoning code adversely affecting a property. Rather, it centers on a leasing issue in which the property owner has represented that 15736 Lorraine can be used for a use that is not allowable in this zoning district. While I appreciate the position this puts the tenant in and sympathize with her, this is fundamentally a landlord-tenant dispute, and BZA does not have the legal authority to adjudicate a landlord-tenant dispute. If a variance is granted by BZA and an affected property owner were to exercise their right to appeal the variance to the Court of Common Pleas, I maintain that the court would have no option but to find in favor of the affected property owner that is against the city of Cleveland. In making its determination, the court would not consider the position of the neighborhood, the operator's business plan, hours of operation, noise mitigation plans, etc. Rather, the court would focus exclusively on Chapter 329 of the codified ordinances and come to the clear conclusion that this appellant has no credible hardship in conforming to the code. In summary, the granting of this variance is not in the public interest. It is in the personal interest of a landlord who ignored the zoning code and seeks to validate the lease entered into with the tenant they misled. In closing, I request that BZA deny these variances, and I join West Parkham's neighborhood development in reaffirming our offers of assistance to help the tenant identify a new space and obtain legal advice concerning voiding her lease and recovering costs. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will open it up to my board if they have any questions or comments for the owner.
Madam Chair, Shannon Leonard from the staff is going to give the city planning recommendation today.
Okay, well, I didn't hear any questions from the board, so go ahead, Shannon.
All right, good morning. Shannon Leonard, Chief Zoning Planner, City Planning Commission. Maurice, if you could move to the slides. So this case came before us back in July 2021, and then it proceeded through you guys and then came back through city planning, and we became intimately involved in November 2021 with this case. And so I have a few slides I would like to share with you all that we shared with the Planning Commission, just to give some background and I think really important information. So again, this is Ms. Prashana Brown. She signed a lease with Mr. Packus here at 15736, I believe Unit 6 on Lorraine Avenue. This is just to give some context that there are, restaurants, retail operations. There's a church that's no longer being used as a church, has a quite large parking lot within 400 feet, and several other establishments. It is adjacent to a multi-family residential district in the Cam's Corners neighborhood. Next slide, please. Ms. Brown, she came to us as the tenant. She was an event planner previously, and she decided to take her business to the next level and invest in opening up an event space where she could host small meetings, birthday parties, engagement parties, baby showers, repasts, basically anything you could use a small event space for, small business meetings, etc. She went ahead and signed a lease that you can see here with the landlord, Mr. Packus. It's a progressively increasing lease over 5 years. She starts paying $1,800. She went ahead and signed this lease under the understanding that this could be used as an event center with Mr. Packus last summer. And she quickly found out from the other neighboring businesses in the community that her event space, one, was not allowed in a local retail district without getting permits, but also was maybe not necessarily welcome, her event space and her clientele. It's also important to note that she specifically chose Cam's Corners because she wanted to serve not only people that she most likely resembles, but also all sorts of people. And so she chose Cam's Corner specifically so that all her clients could feel safe and a welcoming space to be. She also chose this specific place because there is a garage in which she could store all of her event stuff that for the parties she hosts. So not only does she host them, but she also hosts the space. And that's a business model in Cleveland that we've seen a few times, but normally you have the space and then you don't have the event planner there to bring the decorations, have everything on site at one place. But she chose this place and wants to be a part of this community. Next slide, please. By doing that, she actually refurbished this place. She invested in this business. She put in all the flooring, the decorations, only to find out quickly that she needed some permits. And it is not uncommon. Most of our small business owners in the city of Cleveland do not realize that they need certificate of occupancies. And a lot of times the landlords kind of leave this on them. Next slide, please. And so she needed, not only does she need use permits, but she also needed conditional uses from city planning. The conditional uses she needed was a driveway over a public sidewalk. As you can note, this is a landlocked parcel with a very narrow driveway with 9 spaces for this entire little strip center. And so ultimately from the planning commission, they basically told her, you know, like you could use this parking, but you know, it's advised, you know, not because it's such a tight parking. So maybe just use it for loading, etc. Next slide, please. She also needed the use permit. So in a pedestrian retail overlay, any type of assembly use is defined as an institutional use. And so she also needed any type of meeting space, whether you're a sip and paint or whether you're a small event center or whether you are whatever have you, for small gatherings, you have to have an assembly permit. So that automatically turns you into an institutional use under our PRO as of today. Next slide, please. And so the planning commission had to determine, does she get the use permit, the institutional use, which is the assembly use? And does she get the driveway over public sidewalk leading to landlocked parking? And ultimately they granted those conditional uses. Next slide, please. And so just to kind of remind you guys, over the last 3 years, we've had about 5 of these small event centers come forward before the Board of Zoning Appeals, as well as city planning as it relates to small event spaces in local retail business in a pedestrian retail overlay. And they all generally need the same type of conditional uses as well as variances. And so, for instance, the one on Detroit, they needed 72 parking spaces. They were given the conditional uses, but they were also giving the variance to the parking. You guys didn't put any conditions on them, whether determined about parking or whether it was alcohol. It was adjacent to a 2-family district. Additionally, there was the 4700 Lorraine case. They were given their conditional uses. Can you go back, please? And then they were also given the variances for the parking, but they did have the condition to work with a nearby business within 400 feet. Back on January 3rd, 2020, there was a conditional use for institutional use. This was an established use on Waterloo. They were providing no parking on site and they had no parking nearby, and they were given the use variance, and they needed 51 parking spaces, and those were all granted. And then the last one that we had before this case was back in 2021. Again, they were adjacent to a 1-family district and a multifamily district. They were using the use as an event space with an open market. They were given the conditional use, and then actually Planning Commission asked them to reduce their parking. In addition to that, across the city, we are reducing parking for all uses. In fact, this current administration would like to reduce parking minimums completely around our transit stops and in our transit corridors and our pedestrian retail overlay districts. In addition to that, on Friday, we are suggesting legislation, small code changes, zoning code changes, where we reimagine our storefronts and allow some of these small event spaces like axe throwing, sip and paints, small event centers, meeting spaces, baby shower centers, in areas that are less than 3,000 square feet, some of our storefronts that are less than 3,000 square feet, as well as reducing their parking by 66%. So the variances that you see here today, if in a year from now came before you, she wouldn't need variances, because again and again, we're granting variances for small event spaces, and we're reducing parking across the city. And so I think it should also be noted that this business owner and this landlord, you know, they did enter into an agreement. We really would like to put the onus on the landlord, but at the same time, this business owner has really tried to commit to this neighborhood. And it just seems as though from all perspectives that she's, you know, been pretty much not wanted, and her business is not wanted.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
this
I
is,
was
I think, becoming a little too editorial. Thank
Mr.
you.
Slug, I agree with that. I'm Ms. Lander, I need you to stick to the facts of the zoning in front of us and what the position of city planning is.
You can go to the last slide, Maurice. So the City Planning Commission approved the driveway across the public sidewalk, and they approved the institutional assembly use. And I think, with all due respect, ma'am, the City Planning Commission, City Planning, and our staff, we support this use. We have supported it in many cases in the past, and we'll continue to support it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board, I'm pretty sure you have questions, so I'm opening the floor to you.
Madam Chair, to the last statement made by city planning staff, Shannon, when you indicate the planning commission approved, is that the planning commission or the staff? Please describe the source of the approval.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, to the board member. So the City Planning Commission, the board approved the conditional uses for the institutional assembly use and the driveway over the public sidewalk back on March 4th, 2022. In addition, city planning staff support the variances that are being requested here today. It is not uncommon that we've supported these variances at other same type of establishments across the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board, any other questions?
Madam Chair, I have a procedural question. This is Board Member Roca. I have not been formally marked as present in the meeting. I want to know, am I abstaining from this vote?
No, because you let me know you were here when the case started, so you heard the whole case, so it's fine.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
to the, I believe probably the leasee, typically in these cases, when there is a parking situation, we ask to have a written contract submitted to us with an agreement for the additional parking. And at this point, it's been stated that any agreements have been verbal and seem rather, unsure as to the use of the Seven Seas parking lot and if the adjacent bar is reopened for business, how that will impact the parking situation. So this case has been postponed since November, and I'm feeling like things weren't really buttoned up in that time period. We don't have, essentially a business plan with concrete hours of operation. She's stated the hours, but there's nothing that seems too concrete about that. And we also don't have a written agreement for additional parking. So those are my concerns at this point.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? I mean, I think
Madam Chair, this
yes.
is Liz Kukla.
Yes.
I have a letter from Mary Ann Nofel. I do see she's on here. Did we hear testimony from her?
No, I don't remember that name.
She is a neighbor and she's also opposed. So just for the record, we do have a letter from her mentioning that the parking is inadequate and believes that there are better locations for this use. And I also received an email from Ben Campbell from West Park Cams. And I don't know, was Steve Lorenz speaking for them or was he in a different group?
Rosemary
I
Boudry
have
is
that
here
on
on
the-
behalf of the case from
Okay.
West Park Cams. The councilman and I share related opinions, but I'm happy to provide just the additional perspective that I think in this situation, we have had a long history with the property owner, and our staff had met with the property owner and explained to him that it was local retail. And I think one of the challenges in Cleveland is we are never going to correct this issue of property owners entering into illegal leases, putting tenants in this terrible situation. And every time we do it, it reinforces the idea that in Cleveland, you should just do things and then ask for forgiveness later. And I think that unless we start stepping up and asking people to do things the right way, we're going to have the same outcome, and it's going to cause a lot of tension, because we could have been meeting and doing all of this summer 2021 before the lease happened, and we could have worked with Ms. Brown and we could have figured things out before the lease happened. But now Ms. Brown is in a terrible situation, and we're faced with the decision of, do we, again, grant forgiveness when we have a longstanding property owner and other owners across Cleveland, or do we not? And it's a frustrating cycle that has been presented throughout my time working in community development. And I just hope this board will kind of consider that and help us reinforce how to follow procedure in the future in the city of Cleveland. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question related to what Ms. Marjorie just talked about?
Yes.
Two questions. The date when the lease was signed with Ms. Brown and the date that you had conversations with the owner about the restrictions on the use of this property. You made a comment about.
So we spoke to the property owner maybe spring, early summer 2021, and then the next time we engaged with the property owner was once we had heard from some businesses, hey, there's a new business opening here, and the lease had already been signed.
So you're stating that the property owner knew in advance of leasing to Ms. Brown that the use that she intended was not allowed?
Well, I'm not saying specifically event use, but he knew that the property was local retail. And we specifically offered that if you have questions about what's legal in it, that you could come to us, or that if your tenant has questions, a potential tenant, that we would happily work through them so that we could assist them with technical assistance like a certificate of occupancy or things like that. The same that we do anytime we work with any property owner.
Then, Madam Chair, may I ask the Packus, either Dan or the owner of the property, Ms. Annette Packus, did you advise the tenant of the problem with the use and the need for a certificate of occupancy?
This is Dan Packus. We advise all our tenants that they need to get the proper permits for whatever business they're getting. It's only natural, but we've owned the property about 25 plus years at this point, and this is really the first time this has ever been an issue. I will plead ignorance that thinking that a small event space is not a retail space. Again, I know ignorance of the law does not make it right, but previous to Ms. Brown occupying the space, when we had one of the previous tenants before that was a more or less an electronics retail establishment, but he held concerts there, and so going from a small concert hall to being various other retail businesses and now this small meeting place, we didn't know or think that would be a type of business change as it relates to the zoning. So
thank you.
May I address the board on that comment as well? There was a second business that opened around the same time that also had not obtained a certificate of occupancy in that building.
Is this Rosemary?
This is Rosemary. And
okay,
we
you just need to announce who you are before you start talking.
Okay, this is Rosemary. And we worked with that tenant to help them obtain the certificate of occupancy. And so again, I think there's multiple instances of businesses in not obtaining certificates of occupancy. And I don't know if that's, I don't know how that's enforced by the owner in the lease, if they have to, you know, prove that they have a certificate of occupancy or give that to him. I'm not sure how he enforces that. I don't know.
Excuse me, I'm Nalisi. Is it okay to speak?
Ms. Brown, yeah, I was gonna call on you next, so yes, go ahead.
I just want to touch bases on a few things that you guys were discussing. First with Faith, I'm not sure if they sent in when you said there wasn't a concrete business plan, but last year I submitted a few things that were concrete in writing. I'm not sure if you guys got them as far as the agreement, the plan, but things were submitted. Also, I did just want to acknowledge the whole violation and everything didn't come into effect until after I went to go apply for occupancy. I went to go apply in June and I was stopped and they told me that it couldn't be a retail space. I spoke with my landlord, Dean, which is not Dan, that's on the call now, but his brother, I spoke with him. He said he'll look into it, but the violations did not take place until maybe 2 to 3 weeks after me going down to apply for occupancy. So I went there on my own to put the change of occupancy in, and I was stopped once they seen the address and what I was trying to change the business into. So there was a time before all the violations and anything came about to where I tried to do the rightful thing and go to apply. And the city of Cleveland stopped me, not once, but twice. I was down there a few times to change it and they kept stopping me. I had to send in zoning. I had to send in layouts and everything, and I was still stopped. So the violations and everything didn't come about until afterwards. So I just wanted, I felt like that should be important because you guys, I didn't know if you guys knew that I went down to change it, but it was, my opening date was June 3rd. And within that same week, I was going down to apply and the city of Cleveland stopped me and told me that that was a retail space.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Directed to Ms. Brown, I think it is. Can you just state for the record when you signed your agreement with the property owner, and then clarify that you then, after the fact, after the agreement was signed, proceeded to apply for your permits?
So prior to signing the agreement, I looked at the business, the square footage of everything. I even called down to the city. And it was okay. I signed my lease, I believe that was May 23rd of 2021, and I signed under it being a lease, under it being an event space. I went over my business plan with Dean Packets. He said that it was okay. I also asked him about zoning and everything else because I have been in the decorating business for about 5 years now. And I do know some business owners of event centers. So some things came into place for zoning. From what he said, he probably did think that retail was a retail space because I'm selling something. And he said it was okay. It didn't come about. My official opening date wasn't until June 3rd of 2021. Within that same week, I believe June 1st, I went down to get the change of occupancy, and the city of Cleveland, they denied it. They said that it was a retail space and it needed other zoning and things that need to be done. It didn't take place until maybe, I'll say I got my first violation in October. So where they told me I officially had to close down. As of June, when I went down there, nobody told me I officially had to close down until October. When we went to do that, nothing, the bathrooms, the how many people I could have in there, none of that came into effect until this year. January, February of this year, and then the bathroom situation of April. So it kind of just been like a long dragging process, but the lease was signed May 23rd of 2021.
Thank you for clarifying and stating that for the record.
All right, board, you have any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Just for the record, I did look in that file that from last year, and I don't see the business plan that the applicant is mentioning. Just so you know, thanks.
It was denied.
But she's probably saying she submitted it to, I think she said Shannon just said that city planning has it. So.
And that was actually the last date I was gonna ask for one more time. I can't find it on my notes, but maybe it's this March 22nd. Is that when the planning commission approved?
Yes, it was March 4th, 2022. And we have a copy of the business plan, the lease agreement, all of those items we have in the file here in planning that I can give to Liz if she doesn't have them.
Okay, I see Mr. Backus has his hand up. I will hear it one more time. So, Mr. Backus, did you have something else you need to say?
Yeah, I just something quick as it relates just overall, not so much even for the suites or whatever. We as a owners acknowledge that the parking is somewhat constrained for our building. The building's is an older building. The as mentioned before, access to the rear end of the building is tight. So as it relates to anything, as it relates to leasing tenants, even to retail, is always a tight issue. And it pertaining to 15736, we do have problems getting tenants. It's been empty for almost 10 years now because potential lessees look at it and say, I need more parking. I cannot work with this. So getting a parking variance as it relates to the building, if it's denied, does pose a hardship to any even potential leases down the road. So, I just wanted to mention that on the record that irregardless whether it's Les Suites or anybody else, parking has always been a constraint for that particular part of Lorraine Road. There is no big public parking like there is closer towards the hospital area, where there's mass parking behind the buildings. And I just wanted to mention that we'll always have parking issues. All the businesses there have parking issues in that area.
Okay, this is only our second case. We still have a whole agenda. So unless someone that has their hand raised wants to say something new that has not been testified to, let me know. But if not, the board needs to make a decision here. So if there's anybody that needs to say something new that we have not heard, then let me know.
Can I say one more thing?
Is it zoning related?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So for this case, as I've stated, we've given out the parking variances and the conditional uses for other event centers in a local retail and pedestrian retail overlay. And in fact, we are reducing parking across the city. This applicant specifically, we've been working with her intimately since last November, and are fully aware that she has struggled in this neighborhood to find any business owner willing to work with her. And so, understanding that, in some cases you've given for these types of uses, you've given, conditions, in other cases not.
Ms. Leonard, that's a little more editorial though. We just need to stick to, if you have anything extra you need to add as far as the parking zone variances that's being asked for, because that's kind of what the topic was now.
So the amount of parking she needs is roughly between 21 and 23 spaces outside of what's provided on site. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, can I just quickly, this is Councilman Slife, I'd just like to state for the record, as it relates to the use variance, I believe that the planning staff is suggesting that the Board of Zoning Appeals should violate the codified ordinances and approve this variance. Thank you.
They're not, but thank you, Mr. Slife, for that. All
Hi,
right,
this is Asunta Carino, and I'd like to say one thing. I know you keep saying that if it's been repeated, but as everybody's talking, I just want to make sure that everybody's aware the zoning variances are permanent. This is not directed against Ms. Brown, her suite, or her clientele. This is something that affects the neighborhood permanently. This is why we're so openly voicing against it. It has nothing to do with Ms. Brown, her clientele, or her type of business. I feel sorry for her, but I really think if she worked well with Cam's Corner and the councilman, she could find a better business suited for her so she wouldn't have to go and get another lease when she needs something bigger that she's not allowed to do in our space, as she mentioned in our community meeting. And the part with on-site parking for the building and the event center.
All right, thank you. All right, testimony is done. Board, I need a motion, please.
Madam Chair, we've had extensive testimony from city planning, the councilperson, the neighborhood residents, and the appellant, and the property owner. We appreciate that city planning has been working intimately with the leasee, the appellant, and that changes are being made to the ordinances with regard to parking and placement. This is a situation that I believe could have been rectified had the CDC been a stronger partner in this earlier on. We have strong opposition to this as in this current location, as the councilman recently stated. With all that being said, I move that we deny the variance for calendar number 22-193.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Board Member Roca seconds.
Ms. Roca with the second. Go ahead, call the roll, Ms. Kukla.
Ms. Holzer,
No.
Ms. Brown,
No.
Ms. Roca,
I just want to clarify, we're voting on a motion to deny.
Correct.
Board Member Roca votes yes to deny the variances as it relates to section 34301 of the codified ordinances.
Ms. Faith,
Yes.
Ms. Britt.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion has failed. I think we need to make another motion to approve at this time.
Okay.
I thought it was 3-2.
I believe that it was.
Yeah, I believe it was 3-2.
I have that Ms. Holzer said no. I'm sorry, am I wrong here?
That's what I was trying to clarify, Ms. Kukla.
Yeah, I think Ms. Roca should have said no, but she said yes.
I voted to deny the variances.
Okay, and Ms. Britt was also a yes then? Who were the three? Please remind me, I'm sorry. Yes, as in for the denial.
Yeah, that was, yes. I believe that was me, Ms. Roca, and Ms. Faith.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was my interpretation issue. Okay, then calendar number 22-193 is denied. It'll be ratified on January 3rd, and we will send the appellant a letter. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Moving on, Madam Chair.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I'm not reading the cases anymore.
That's all right.
We
We still
have
have
Councilman Griffin still with us.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we'll go to his case.
which is Buckeye.
22-211. I'll wait until we scroll up to it.
1 second.
While you're looking for this is Brett Warden. I joined the meeting for that last vote. So is it safe to leave? I think the other ones don't pertain to me.
You may sign off, Mr. Warden.
All right. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Certainly. Have a good day.
All right, we have calendar number 22-211. This is at 11107 Buckeye Road. DMW Developers LLC proposes to establish a daycare use in a C2 residence office district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there is one. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
Thank you. I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand, reply, I do, state your name and your address.
I do. Blaine Griffin, 601 Lakeside.
I do. Jay Shauna Bates, 8304 Wade Park Avenue.
Anyone else? Okay, Madam Chair.
Thank you. History of the property, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This property was originally zoned general retail in 1929. In 2004, it was changed to the Residence Office District. In our Records Administration Office, we found that in 1925, a permit was issued to enclose a porch. 1927, a permit was issued to erect an addition. Madam Chair, that addition was identified as a playroom. And then in 1973, a permit was issued to add a classroom to this property. Then, Madam Chair, in the more recent history, we see that in 1994, permit was issued to demolish a one-story garage. 1998, a permit was issued to re-roof the property. And I think that's all that we have that is relevant. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting an area variance from the side yard regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the area variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Bates, tell us what you'd like to do.
So what I'm trying to do is establish a type A home daycare, which means that I could care for up to 12 children per shift. That's what I'm trying to do.
Or can you tell us more about what you want to do with your business, like hours of operation, drop off, pick up, how many kids you'll have at one time, employees, that kind of thing?
All the details, understood. So what I'm gonna do is run my business from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. at this time, depending on the need in the community, because there are a lot of retail businesses right there in the Buckeye area. We may stay open up until 10 p.m., depending on if a second shift is needed. In order to, what we'll be able to care for is 12 children per shift, or up to 12, which if we're gonna care for 12 children, we need 2 employees. That's what's required. As far as parking, in the rear of the home, there is parking for 2 vehicles if both of the employees drive. For drop off and pick up, the parents will pull in. There's a side door, and we would do all pick up and drop off right there at that door. I run a couple different home daycares, and right now we do have scheduled drop off and pick up. Ever since COVID, we just stuck with the scheduled drop off and pick up just because it keeps down the traffic. But that's what that's the way we're headed at this moment.
So your side door, is that on the is there a driveway by the side door where they pull up or?
Yes, when you're pulling, there's
Okay.
a side. Mhm.
Okay. All right, I can see that now.
And then right there in the back, that trash has been removed, but right there in the back is where the employees would park, you know, for their shifts.
Mhm.
And what else? Was there anything else you needed? Can't remember.
Madam
Uh,
Chair, the age of the children?
So we care for children between the ages of 6 weeks to 5. Not gonna do any school agers at this home.
And Madam Chair, to the appellant, you indicated that at the current time you wanted to do hours of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., but you may need to expand to 10 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a possibility. Normally, what we do is provide care based on the need. If we see where we have more parents that's working 3 to 10 or 3 to 9, then we would provide care during those hours.
Okay. So for the sake of what we're doing here for you, I believe you'd want us to give you
you
up
want to
until
use
10
that
p.m.
later. You want to live,
Yeah,
yeah, you want to use that later hour
right.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, 10
because
p.m. would be.
it'll be on the record, so you won't be able to
Right.
violate that. So,
Oh, understood. So yes,
Okay.
10 p.m.
Okay, great.
all right, Councilman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the project. I actually went by once Ms. Bates reached out to me. It's a pretty commercial area. Adding a daycare to that area especially with the improvements that she made and the sufficient parking, I support this venue.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from the board?
Madam
All
Chair?
right, city plan.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair. This is Liz. Just, I guess I feel like I should say for the record that this applicant has come before this board on 2 other occasions, and we have, just for the record, she mentioned that she had 2 other businesses, and we did approve those 2 businesses here at the board. Thank you.
Thank you. City planning.
Yeah, Maurice Rowland, City Planning, thank you. First of all, it appears that the house has been completely renovated, which is great. It looks really good, nice, neat, and clean, which we like. This is not a use variance. This is only an area variance. And again, it's an existing structure. They have the 15-foot side yard on the one side. On the other side, they don't. It's up against the parking lot, a church parking lot, I might add. And there's even I don't know if she plans on sharing the recreational space in the back that the church has. That would be great too. But as the councilman said, Buckeye, as you all probably know, Buckeye is a fairly commercial strip here, and this is actually the kind of area that we would want to put a daycare. So we recommend approval of this.
Great, thank you. All right, board, if there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move with a motion, given testimony by Councilman Griffin, who supports this, and City Planning, who also supports. The appellant has stated that her hours of operation will be 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., that she will be having up to 12 children, and the ages will be from 6 weeks to age 5, and the need for 2 employees per shift, and parking on site for those employees. So with that being stated, I move that we go ahead and approve calendar number 22 to 11.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Member Brown, I second.
Ms. Brown with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Ms. Holzer?
Yes.
Ms. Roca?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Faith?
Yes.
Ms. Britt?
Yes.
Calendar number 22-211 is granted. It'll be ratified on Tuesday, January 3rd, and we will send the appellant a letter.
Thank you.
Thank
luck,
you.
Ken.
Good luck with everything.
Good luck.
All right, think we can go back to the top.
All right, we have calendar number 22-209. This is at 3478 West 105 Street. Karaja LLC owner proposes to change use from service station to mechanic shop, parenthetically a repair garage, and a used auto sale shop in a general retail district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there are two. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand, reply I do, and state your name and your address, please.
I do. Chad Dasher, West End Community Development, 10313 Lorraine Avenue.
Rafat Karaja, 3478 West 105th, the owners of the property, Cleveland, Ohio 44111.
Anyone else? Madam Chair.
Thank you. History of the property, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's been no change in the zoning since 1929. In our Records Administration Office, we found that a permit was issued in 1928 to erect a gas station, as well as install gas tanks, then also to erect a one-story storage building at this address. Then in 1953, we see that a new concrete block service station was erected on the site. And then in the more recent history, in 2015, a permit was issued to install a cabinet sign. And then in 2016, a permit was issued to install 371 lineal feet of 4-foot-high ornamental fence and gate. And that's all that I have that's relevant. Thank you.
Thank you. Legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting an area variance from the landscaping regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the area variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Karaja, go ahead.
Yes.
Tell us what you'd like to do.
We're applying for a variance for this property. And then we want to keep the usage as a service station as it is existing, not a mechanic shop. We corrected that application in the city last month, and we turned in drawings for the landscaping and for the layout of the property.
What exactly, what use do you want to do with this?
Service station and then a car sales.
So no repairs.
I didn't hear you.
So no repairs. It's written. It says repair garage.
Yeah, no, not a repair garage. It's a motor vehicle service garage.
What is that?
What kind of service would you
So
be providing?
This will be just minor repair, not a mechanic shop, major repair. Just minor repairs on the vehicles that we sell on the property. Just for service.
Sir, could you stipulate what those are for us?
What type of service?
Yes, could you just stipulate what minor repairs are?
Like oil change, brakes, tires, stuff like that. Nothing major like engine or anything like that. Just small repairs.
Okay, thank you for that.
I have the code right in front of me if you would like me to read what's not allowable in a service station.
We don't need that right now. I'm gonna let the
Okay.
appellant continue his case, and then we'll go into. Okay, you can go ahead and finish, Mr. Karaja.
Yeah, and we want the variance for the car sales as well.
And we have already did the drawing for the landscape on the property.
So it's saying that you need a 4-foot wide landscaping. So are you saying you're providing that now in this plan?
Yeah, so the drawings that we have submitted, it shows the landscaping, how it is and what's required for the landscaping. So we did that according to the city code.
Madam
Okay,
Chair?
what are your yes.
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt. About the landscaping, though, they are required to have a 10-foot. I think, is it 10 foot? They do need a transition strip to the rear. And it looks like they are proposing a fence. Do we know the condition or the material that's proposed for the fence at the rear?
It's in a drawing.
Oh, it's at the bottom there. So it's gonna be in the rear, it's gonna be this wrought iron too?
Yes.
Okay, Madam Chair, that is where we're required to have a 10-foot wide landscape transition strip to buffer the residential. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't take any testimony away from Maurice Rulins. I just wanted to clarify for the record that they are required to have that. And also the write-up says that they're providing 3 feet instead of 4 feet for the frontage strips that we see on West 105. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, go ahead and continue, Mr. Karaja.
All the fences that are already on the property, they're at 4 feet. And then the rear, where it shows that we want to replace it, is also at 4 feet elevation. Plus the requirement of plantation that we need to put for the landscaping.
Okay, what will your hours of operation be? What hours and days?
It'll be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
And they'll be closed on Sunday then?
We close on Sundays, correct?
Okay. Mr. Riccardi, did you have your hand up?
Just wanted to say that I was informed by the councilman last week that he had talked to the applicant and that he was not going to do major repair. So in effect, they're not requesting the variance item number 1 anymore. As minor repair is permitted in a general retail district. So he's more or less withdrawing or doesn't want number 1. And as for number 2, Ms. Kukla is correct. It seems as if the crux of it, there is landscaping provided in the new drawing. It's mainly only lacking in the 10-foot transition strip that's required where it abuts the residential district. So that's the only variance that's required.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Riccardi, Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
So on the drawing that we see, there's a buffer on the side of St. Mark's, and that's abutting the residential. Do you need the same on the other side of that existing building or just one side?
That's right. What the code would call for is a 10-foot wide landscape buffer wherever it abuts the residential, which on the other side of the building also. So it's lacking in that it's 5 feet instead of 10 feet, and that there's none on the other side of the building. And that's the issue for which a variance would be required.
Thank you. So there's really no reason from what we see on the site plan that the appellant could not meet that requirement.
Can I speak on behalf of the community?
Go ahead, Mr. Dasher.
Okay. Myself and the councilman have met with the appellants a number of times out there. When you're talking on the St. Mark side, that's not going to a residential area. That is actually facing a body shop that has a lot less landscaping than the appellants are requesting.
Oh, yeah. So they
we-
don't need all the buffer for like headlights and all that kind of stuff because it's abutting another body shop.
Exactly. It's abutting another body shop. Councilman and I have met out there, and we're I know I can't speak for the councilman here, but as a neighborhood group, we're comfortable and happy with what the appellant's proposing for landscaping. Putting in 10-foot beds there on a parcel this size, and if you can go back one slide too.
Which slide what do you want to see?
The one that you had on right before this one.
Showing.
Let me see if I can see it. Oh, you can see up on the right-hand corner here, right under where it says Ward 11. There's not a whole lot of headlight things going right here. This is, the majority of it is going to be going right in front. It's not going into a house. The setbacks are almost identical between the commercial property and the two-family house behind there. We're comfortable with the 5-foot instead of 10 foot. 10 foot in this situation right here on that rear lot line would be a little overkill in landscaping. They're putting up a nice decorative fence. They're putting in some good shrubs and ground cover. Like I said, we're as a community group, Westtown, we support this as presented.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dasher. I will actually, someone have a question? No? Okay. All right, that'll send me to city planning then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maurice Rowland, City Planning. So, of course, we're not looking at the first variance. It's not a use variance. We're only looking at the landscape requirements. And I guess my question would be, looking at the bottom lower left picture, that's what's there now. I hope that's not what's being proposed, because it looks like some wood chips have been sprinkled on top of blacktop. And then a particularly sad-looking little shrub was thrown in the middle there. And of course, that's drastically different than what's being shown on the drawing. So I guess my question to the applicant is this what is intended to stay, or are we actually meeting what's actually on the drawing with very nice technical drawings here and details on the planting?
Yeah, so we will put in what's on the drawing. What's shown in the picture right now, that's what's existing when we purchased the property. So once we get the approval in the beginning of the spring, we'll bring in the landscaper and start working and set up according to the drawings.
That's fine. I just wanted to ask that question just to be sure. And if that's the case, based on the councilman and the neighborhood's support for this, we would recommend approval.
All right, thank you. Board, if you don't have any other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I just have one question before we proceed. In the lower left photograph, there's a chain link fence. And I'm trying to determine in the upper right photograph if that has been changed out to the wrought iron, or
Yeah.
if it's still chain link.
It's still chain link. Once we do the landscaping, that fence will be changed. Part of the work on the landscaping.
Okay, so we're gonna
It
have.
will match the rest of the fencing around the property.
All right, perfect. Okay. How many cars do you plan on having on this lot?
About between 10 and 20.
10 and 20. Okay, I just was wondering about capacity. All right, Madam Chair, given the testimony, one other thing, to Ms. Kukla, do we have a letter or an email from the councilman?
Yes, I believe I actually do. Yeah, there it is on the screen.
Okay. And Is he in support, looks like? Yes, I
He
see.
is, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
All right. And so we're really just talking about variance number 2. Number 1 has, as Mr. Riccardi stated, is not necessary given the proposed actual use. With support of the councilman, the CDC, and city planning, the appellant has noted that they will be doing minor repairs to include oil change, tire change, and things of that nature. Hours of operation will be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. We have seen the site plans with the proposed fencing and planting materials, and we've reviewed the dimensions of the planting beds and are comfortable with a reduced footage on those buffer areas. So with that being said, I move that we approve calendar number 22-209.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Board Member Holzer, I second.
Ms. Holzer with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Roca?
Yes.
Ms. Holzer?
Yes.
Ms. Vaith?
Yes.
Ms. Britt?
Yes.
Calendar 22-209 is granted. It'll be ratified on Tuesday, January 3rd, and then we will send the appellant a letter.
All right, thank you. All right, I think we got, West 23rd.
We have calendar number 22-212. This is at 3893 West 23rd Street. Conrad Becker proposes to change use from 2-family to a 4-family in a 2-family residential district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances, as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there are 2. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
Thank you. I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand, reply I do, state your name and your address, please.
I do.
State your name and your address, please.
John Fail. I'm the architect on the project. Been retained by the owner. My address is 31413 Drake Drive, Bay Village, Ohio.
What's your last name again, sir?
Fail. F as in Frank.
Fail. Okay.
AILE.
Are you representing the owner today?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Anyone else for this case?
Rick from Deanna Property Management.
And your name and address, please?
Could be Eric from Garcia from 3893 West 23rd Street.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you. History of the property, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's been no change in the zoning since 1929. In our Records Administration Office, we found that in 1920, a permit was issued to erect an addition to a dwelling on site. 1924, a permit was issued to erect a garage. This might be the wrong. This one says 1914, a dwelling was erected on the site, a 1-story dwelling. We see that in 1971, a permit was issued to correct violations to 2 dwellings and a store building. Signage was erected in 1972. And then in 1979, a permit was issued to erect an 8x8 storage shed. And then we just see, Madam Chair, that in 2015 rental registration was renewed, as well as 2019 and 2021. Oh, and then also May of this year, 2022. And that's all that I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting a use variance and an area variance from the parking regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the use variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will result in an unnecessary hardship particular to the property such that there will be no economically feasible use of the property without the variance, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code. To obtain the area variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Mr. Fail.
Yes, well, I was retained by the owner to look at this property because the recent buyer bought it with the knowledge, or they thought they had, that this property was a 4-family unit, which is different than what the zoning is in the neighborhood. But if you look at the floor plans, the building does have 4 living units, 2 on the first floor, 2 on the second floor. You know, at one point in time, it looks like it was retail on the first floor based on the history with residential above. And then they added the space towards the east side of the property, and that also contained 2 residential units, 1 on the first floor, 1 on the second. And then they do have a garage addition that they put on the back. It wasn't 8 by 8. It looks like it was 10 by about 15. But regardless, this property by previous users had been used as a 4-unit, I would say apartment, multifamily type building. And the buyer, with that knowledge, bought the property with the thought that they would continue using it as a 4-unit building. So when they went to apply for some improvements on the property, they were denied because they said that the building was out of compliance, which I understand because it is a 2-family residential district. So that was a variance that was put on their plate, saying they had to get approval for a variance for 4-family. And then the other issue had to do with parking. This is a corner lot, and there's no place to put parking. And since the 2-story addition and the garage was put on towards the east side of the property, there's no place for parking. There hasn't been for as long as that east side addition's been put on the building. So it's been used as a 4-unit multifamily building in the past. And there's no change according to the ownership and what their expectations were. And then it needs to be noted that there's a building in the same district almost directly across the street that's a 5-family building, residential in the same district, and it does not have any off-street parking. So we're just taking the building as is, as it was used, and not making any changes other than wanting to renovate the interior spaces to improve the property. And that's my understanding of what's happening here.
All right, thank you. Mr. Garcia, did you want to add anything?
No, he basically said everything I was gonna say.
All righty. Okay, city planning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maurice Rowland, City Planning. So I guess I'm glad to hear from the architect that you are planning some renovations. Those were my concerns with this building. As you can see in the pictures, there's probably some zoning code or building code violations going on here. I'm not really sure. But the fact that you are planning some renovations, that's a good thing. Yes, You can see in the upper right-hand corner, that is where the curb cut was, and you really can't utilize it for anything. Unfortunately, in the past, the building was I think, built out into the driveway area. So this is an existing condition. It has been used as a 4-unit suite probably for years. We would recommend approval.
Thank you. Board, any questions?
One quick question, Madam Chair. Does the building have like 4 separate electric and other utility meters for each unit?
That's a good question. I would have to assume it does. I see right now I'm looking at that one elevation. I see 2 meters.
Yeah, it kind
I
of
don't
looks
know
like
if
it on the
it's-
side of the house there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of wires and things going.
Yeah,
Looks
I see
Those are
2
like 4
meters.
cable
It doesn't-
boxes.
Yeah,
The
there's
wires
4
and
cable
things-
boxes. That's the important thing, right?
No, I'm asking about real utilities.
Yeah, no, I understand. My understanding, and this happens a lot, is that the building owner, if they had 2 units in a building and they only had 1 meter, that would be the responsibility of the building owner to provide utility bills to each of the 2 residents and split it. It looks to me like there's only 2 electric services to the building, but that doesn't mean there aren't 2 meters elsewhere. I can't answer that question because I wasn't looking at that when we were over there.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Maurice. I think I heard that he mentioned code violations. I just want to make sure I heard correctly, and if there are code violations, what they are.
Yes, Madam Chair. I can't be specific. I'm not a building code. I'm not an inspector. Things like the porch there, it looks like it might be probably in disrepair, maybe rotted. Doesn't look secure. I don't know what kind of violations it would be for the siding. I see green like mold all over the side of the building. So there were some things that were giving me concern or pause to recommend approval. But with the architect saying that they were looking to renovate the structure, that's why I decided to go ahead and recommend approval.
Yeah, for the record, he's speculating on what could be wrong with the building, so we can't.
Thank you.
We can't
Yes.
say specifically what it is.
Just trying to zoom in to see if there's a meter there, but it doesn't look to be. That does not look to be a meter.
Madam Chair, I have a quick
Yes.
question, just to the appellant through the chair. Is the building currently occupied by 4 tenants?
Eric?
No, it's currently occupied by 2 tenants. We have 2 vacant units.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, to the appellant then, is the property also registered with the city's rental registry then?
That is correct.
But Madam Chair, I believe I saw that in our history here. Yeah, there are rental registration renewals, 2015, 2019, as well as earlier, in 2021. Oh, and this year, yeah, as well, in May.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Sounds like all the board members have their questions satisfied, so we have the approval of city planning on this, and we have statements from the architect speaking on behalf of the appellant that updates are going to happen, excuse me. And so with that being said, I move that we go ahead and approve calendar number 22-212.
Can I have a second, please?
Remember Roca seconds.
Ms. Roca with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Ms. Holzer?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Roca,
Yes.
Ms. Faith,
Yes.
Ms. Britt.
Yes.
Calendar 22-212 is granted. It'll be ratified on January 3rd, and then we will send the appellant a letter.
All right, next case.
And it looks like I'll be reading the next two cases together, calendar number 22-214 and 215. Okay. We have calendar number 22-214 and 22-215. These are at 9511 Detroit Avenue and 9503 Detroit Avenue. Buza Properties proposes to establish, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. My brain is not working this morning. Okay, Buza Properties proposes to install 60 linear feet of 6-foot-high aluminum fence and a guardrail in actual front yard in a semi-industry district. For this case, the owner appeals for relief from strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there is one. And then for calendar number 22-215, Buza Properties proposes to install linear feet of 6-foot-high aluminum fence and guardrail in actual front yard in a semi-industry district. And for this case, the owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there is one. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand. Reply, I do. State your name and your address, please.
I do. Paul Buza, 9515 Detroit Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio.
Anyone else for this case? Okay, Madam Chair.
Thank you. History of the property, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's been no change in the zoning since 1929. We didn't find any variances for these two addresses. We did find some records in our Records Administration Office for 9503 Detroit. A permit was issued in 1941 to demolish a dwelling that was used for storage of auto parts. And then in 1953, a permit was issued to erect a block sales service building. And in 1964, a permit was issued to erect a parking lot. Now for the address of 9511 Detroit, a permit was issued in 1929 to erect a storage shed and office. 1949, a permit was issued to erect a steel warehouse. And then in 1960, a permit was issued to demolish a one-story single story storage building on the site. And that's all that I have that's relevant. Thank you.
Thank you. Legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting an area variance from the fencing regulations of the zoning code. And I think that these will be the same for both of these. To obtain the area variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Buza, tell us what you'd like to do.
Well, I'd respectfully request a variance for the fact that I'd like to install a 6-foot-high ornamental fence and gate, primarily to increase the security of the parking lot and having issues with catalytic converters being stolen, up on cars and using them to go to the bathroom. So I'd like to limit access to the parking lot without having to pass through the gate so that we can keep tabs on it. I'm proposing this fence. It looks very similar to one that's already down the street 3 blocks from here at 8903. I submitted some photos of that. So I'm fixing up the building as well. I'm trying to pick something that will provide security as well as make the property look better.
All right, thank you. So you're proposing the same 6-foot high fencing to be uniform across the entire property? Can you hear what I asked? I can't hear you.
Across the front of the property?
Is all the fencing gonna be uniform? That's basically my question.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, okay, city planning. I think the only thing I was looking at here is something about the front yard, so Maurice, you can chime in on that.
Yes, Madam Chair, Maurice Rowland, City Planning. Yeah, that's you're able to grant the variance for the fence in the front yard. I would like to point out that this case has actually got us thinking about the zoning code, and we're actually considering making a change so that you can actually put a 6-foot fence in the front of a semi-industry district. It really doesn't kind of make sense that it's allowed in general industry and not semi-industry. I had emailed the fence company for a copy or either a cut sheet of the fence or pictures of the actual details of the fence. I never received that. So we would recommend approval of this, but I would ask that you hold ratification until we get just, either a picture or some kind of details about the exact type of fence that Mr. Bouza is putting up. But otherwise, we recommend approval.
Great, thank you. Board, any questions?
Madam Chair, to Mr. Rowlands, is it our understanding that this is going to be black ornamental, typical black ornamental?
That's what he has written on the plans.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, again, I don't have any cut sheets for that, but that's what I was assuming, yeah.
Okay, great. All right.
And a guardrail.
And the guardrail, but I don't believe the guardrail is actually part of the zone, as part of the variance, and the guardrail will be inboard of the fence, so it actually will, I believe, help to protect the fence from getting hit from the inside. Am I correct, Mr. Bouza?
That is correct.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Okay.
Great. Okay. We're all on the same page then. Okay. With that testimony from the appellant and city planning, we will make the condition that we receive a cut sheet, some sort of visual picture of the proposed fence prior to ratification. And I move that we go ahead and approve the variance for this case.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Board Member Roca seconds.
Ms. Roca with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Holzer?
Yes.
Ms. Roca?
Yes.
Ms. Bates?
Yes.
Ms. Britt?
Yes.
Calendar numbers 22-214 and 22-215 are granted conditionally. We will hold ratification until we receive a drawing or photo of the style of fence. Once we receive that, we will ratify the case on the following Monday, and then we will send the appellant a letter.
Very much.
All right, thank you. Next case.
We have calendar number 22-146. This is at 1242 West 65th Street. Jason Nahees proposes to install a front yard deck and front yard wooden fence, 3 foot and 4 inches high in a B12 family residential district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there are 3. This case was postponed from August 29th to allow time for the appellant to meet with the City Planning Commission staff and design review. A second postponement was made on September 26th to allow time for the appellant to update his drawings. And finally, a third postponement was made at the request of the appellant as the drawings were still needed more work. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Please raise your hand, reply, I do, state your name and your address, please.
I do. Valerie Mayen, 1242 West 65th Street.
I do. Jason Niehaus, 1242 West 65th Street.
Sorry, Mr. Nieses, can you spell your last name, please?
Yeah, Niehaus, Nehez.
Anyone else for this case? Okay, Madam Chair.
We already had the history, I believe, so we'll go to legal standard.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting area variances from the fencing and deck regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the area variances, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variances will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zone.
Okay, thank you. All right, so you all had enough time to get everything together, so what happened?
Correct. So we do have a PowerPoint presentation for you that we've prepared. I do apologize for my intermittent coughing. I'm just getting over some severe bronchitis. And I promise you, by day I am a fashion designer, but I do not look like one today because I have been under the weather. So forgive me.
That's all right. Everybody's been sick, so go ahead.
Forgive me. So this is our house before. You may or may not know, but I actually rented this property for 7 years before we were allowed to purchase. Our landlord passed away from cancer, so her son took over the rental property, and he did not want to maintain it when we were infested with mice in 2016. So he sold it to us at a very fair price. That being said, we never really had a need to do any exterior or interior work that required permitting because we were renters. When we became owners in 2018, it was, I believe, we started to take matters into our own hands to continue to beautify the property because it definitely was in need of beautifying. We did most of that on the interior with what little money we were able to do. We added air conditioning because we had 2 small children. And we also have 2 large dogs. Now, the fence had always been a point of contention for us, but we didn't quite have the budget to repair it for quite some time until we finally saved up enough money to do so. We hired the services of our contractor, Wesley November. He was referred to us by one of my sewers. He came highly recommended. He was very responsive and communicative in the beginning. And he did alert us and let us know that he had filed all the appropriate permits. I am very familiar with permit filing, as I did have a storefront on the corner of 65th and Detroit from 2010 to 2015. So I had to file permits and forms of occupancy and all the proper paperwork for that in that time. So I was aware of what needed to be done, and we were informed that it had been done. But unknown to us, it had not been completed. It wasn't until the fence was nearly towards completion that we were made aware that no paperwork had been filed and that we were in the situation we find ourselves in now. As you can see, this is the front area that was covered with a wooden deck. It was quite laborsome for us to upkeep. Our neighbor even offered to plant flowers for us one year, and she did, and they were beautiful. But as I mentioned, we have 2 large dogs, and they just wrecked our front yard. So as you can imagine, it was very unsightly. And you can see too the steps here and the top of the porch. It was a concrete that every winter, as the cracks would fill with ice and water, it would expand and it was cracking and it was crumbling, and it was very dangerous for our children to climb on it. The railings were very wobbly. It was just a mess. So we attempted to fix the problem by filling that part with rocks and by building a fence that would keep the dogs out, because they loved the rocks and it just became a giant poop yard and it was awful. And so we were really trying to contribute to the beautification of our street by not allowing that. Then we tried to paint the chain link fence white, but as you know, the saying goes, you can't paint a pig and make it into a unicorn, right? So there was only so much we could do within our power to make the fence look nicer, to make our porch more habitable for our children. It is a very small house. It's about 1,300 square feet with the basement. And so we wanted to, increase our living space by making the porch more usable. And the best way we found to do that was to cover it with this wooden deck or this wooden like platform type material that our contractor suggested. When he sent us these drawings, I did send him a text asking him if we could have more spaces between the planks. I had sent him some pictures for reference that we have in some screenshots that we sent him. He also offered to cover this part of our yard with wood so that we wouldn't have the problem of the dogs pooping in it or weeds coming up or it looking too unsightly. And then it would give us more usable space so that if we had our in-laws over, we could sit on this porch, we could entertain a little bit more. Another big reason for us redoing our porch and our fence was that, as I mentioned before, we had 2 large dogs. In 2016, during the Bright Winter Festival, as you know, the block behind us on 67th, the Italian community there is very vibrant. They like to pop fireworks often. I know this. I've lived here for almost 12 years now in this house. The fireworks have often even been so loud and vibrant that they've busted 2 of our windows 2 years in a row. And so when that happens, our dogs get very scared. And even if we lock the gates, we put them inside, we put thunder shirts on them, we give them relaxing dog tea, they still escape. And unfortunately, one year when that was happening, one of our dogs escaped and she was hit on the shoreway and she died. And my dog walker found her on the shoreway and she brought her to me. And I buried her myself, and it was a really difficult time. She was my first dog. It was a very traumatic experience. So she got out of the gate because it was too short. And then the gates would often open. A lot of neighborhood kids like to come and play with our dogs, and they would come rattle the gates and open them, and the dogs would get out. Luckily, our other dog survived, but our first dog did not. When we had children a year later, we noticed that the girls sometimes could unlatch the gate themselves, and we found that it was very dangerous because this is a very busy street. There are often, too, a lot of cars that speed down our block without hesitation. There is a speed limit here, but it's not enforced. So we felt the best way to keep our dogs and our children safe were to build a fence, or build a better fence, essentially. This was the drawing that we submitted for appeal, and a way that we could modify our current fence so that we would not need to do as much reconstruction. As I mentioned prior, we did save up a lot of money, almost $12,000 to pay for this remodel, which for me, that's about a third of my salary. We are just coming off of COVID. I employ 5 people. During COVID, I also employed 35 sewers. My husband works full-time as well. We have 2 small children that attend school in the neighborhood. We do feel like we contribute greatly to the vibrancy of our community. My business is in this community as well. I've been in business for 14 years, and we work really hard for the money we have. I have a lot of people that depend on me for their employment. So to be able to pull money from my salary to pay for this kind of remodel is a big sacrifice for us. And we didn't just do it for the safety of our children or our dogs. We also did it to try to improve our neighborhood street frontage, because it was pretty unsightly, as you saw in the photos before. Additionally, during COVID, we did have some new neighbors that moved in next door to us whenever our neighbor passed away, and they remodeled the house. We had some new neighbors from Washington that also have children, and our dogs kept escaping into their yard, and it became a nuisance, we believe, and also a danger to our animals. So as you can see, we are on board to be as compliant, as amenable as we possibly can to fix this. We are hoping that we can appeal to the board that would be able to provide us some kind of compromise so that we can maintain the fence we have, but possibly just adjust it and amend it to fit within the zoning contingencies, because we do feel that we have been as available and as flexible as we can. But as you know, as we mentioned before, our contractor did not fulfill his obligations as he said, and in fact,
ma'am, did you meet with city planning at all about this?
We did.
Okay, can you just tell me what happened with that meeting?
Yeah, we met with, I believe it was referred to HDRS committee, and we had talked about some possible, changes. There was some different options presented
Nothing settled.
to move forward. This was one of them, to lower the fence to be
By a foot.
4 feet around to meet the one variance. And then the other that was important was the opacity. And so in this, we're showing that we would, remove boards and put in sort of thinner ones to have that opacity, but still asking, I guess, in the third variance of the projection out. So we had worked with Adam Davenport, who was unable to attend today, but he had suggested this
configuration.
This way to move forward with you guys. So that brings us kind of to where
we're at now. Yeah, Adam's the one who's been advising us, and I know that the drawing may not show it in the best way, but the dark portions are the wooden planks, and the light portions are the part of the fence that would be transparent.
Removed.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of understood that.
For reference, I don't know if it's consequential or not, but one of my sewers actually also fell victim to this certain contractor. He did not finish our project. He stained our porch the incorrect color. He actually painted it brown instead of staining it. And at that point, when we asked him to fix it, he said that he was done and he was leaving the project because he was out of money. And we'd already paid him at that point $10,000. And so he did not finish the project. Our back fence is unfinished. And then my sewer, who recommended him to me, they live in Lakewood. He's been working on their fence and porch as well. And he also left that job mid-project and did not complete it. Their house is currently being held up by 2x4s and concrete. So this is a recurring practice of this contractor to not act in full faith and confidence of his clients, and also to not be conducting his services above board. We obviously understand as homeowners, we are responsible. So we do take that responsibility, and we are here to reach some kind of agreement that would satisfy the board and hopefully our budget as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna talk to Maurice right now. Maurice, has there been any internal discussion with city planning about this, or?
Yes, Madam Chair. First of all, I sympathize with the issues that you've had with your contractors. I wish I could say that won't happen anymore, but unfortunately it continues to happen. And that's a very unfortunate situation. Yes, we did meet with Jason a couple of times, or maybe it was just once, I don't recall. We discussed different options. Adam Davenport, the neighborhood planner for this area, did meet with the applicants again, I think on multiple times, and this was the solution that he is recommending for approval. They are lowering it, as they said, and they are also making it approximately 50% open. So we feel that we've reached a decent compromise, and we would recommend approval.
Thank you so much, Maurice. We appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much. Board, any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, we thank the appellants, both of them, for their statements and their need to protect their animals and their children. We've heard statement from city planning, and that there has been several meetings with Mr. Davenport, the city planner for that area, and that the image that we have before us now is the proposed compromise, giving a lower height and 50% opacity to the fence enclosure at this time. So with that, I move that we go ahead and approve this variance for KL number 22-146.
Thank you. You can have a second, please.
Member Brown, I second.
Ms. Brown with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarity's sake, what was the overall height of the fence? Was that mentioned? Was the specific height?
I think our fence was 1 foot taller.
I believe they said they were taking it down to 4 feet.
Yeah, within the variance, yeah.
Correct.
Not
Okay.
just 4 feet, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I shall call the roll. Ms. Roca,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Holzer,
Yes.
Ms. Bates,
Yes.
Ms. Britt.
Yes.
Calendar number 22-146 is granted conditionally with the understanding that one plank will be removed to open the fence up to 50% opacity, and also that the fence will be lowered to 4 feet. This will be ratified on January 3rd, and after that, we will send the appellants a letter. Thank you.
All right, thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Feel better.
Thank you.
All right,
Not every
next
day we
case.
have a Project Runway star on our meetings. So
I promise I am a fashion designer. Come visit me at the shop and I'll
we know well. Thank you. All right, moving on.
I think this is our last case, if I
Yes.
am correct.
Hopefully, let's get it.
So, calendar number 22-195. This is at 4506 Lorraine Avenue. This is at North Coast Shuffleboard Club LLC proposes expansion of office and salon use to include a tattoo studio in a local retail business district and a pedestrian retail overlay district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there is one. And this case was postponed from November 14th at the request of the appellant to allow time for him to meet with the community. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
Thank you. I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand, reply, I do, state your name and your address, please.
I do, Robert Morton, 2132 Chesterland Avenue.
Anyone else for this case? Madam Chair.
Thank you. History of the property, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This property was originally zoned general retail in 1929. In 1995, it was changed to local retail, and in 2011, it was changed to the pedestrian retail overlay. We found in our records administration that in 1981, a permit was issued to build a new storefront. You may remember this, Madam Chair. I'm not sure actually if you were here in 2016, but in 2016, this board granted a variance, calendar 16-92, to erect an addition and establish use as a bar restaurant with indoor-outdoor shuffleboard courts and patio, plus a 17-car parking lot. And then as well, we granted a variance in calendar number 17-137 to further expand the new spaces, a bar, restaurant, and music recreation, the indoor-outdoor shuffleboard courts, and a 20-car parking lot. This variance was granted in June 5th of 2017. The first variance was granted with the condition, this is the first variance going back to 2016. The first variance was granted with the condition that a wall of arborvitae will be installed along the northern property line. And Madam Chair, the second variance was granted without any conditions. And that's all that I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting a use variance from the regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the use variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will result in an unnecessary hardship particular to the property, such that there will be no economically feasible use of the property without the variance, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
All right, go ahead. Mr. Morton, tell us what you'd like to do.
Excuse me?
Go ahead, tell us what you'd like to do.
Okay, so I'm just looking to do a private tattoo studio. Basically, what I do currently is I kind of work in a private studio. It's just in Mentor, and I live in Lakewood, so it's like it's a little bit of a drive. And basically, yeah, like what I do, I only handle like one client a day. So I'm not really doing like a high volume of traffic. Also, I'm trying to reduce like and discourage from any like people like walking into a shop. especially for the type of work that I do. It can be distracting, and I'm just trying to focus on more quality rather than quantity of people. I think basically I'd like to be able to like house at least like anywhere from right now. I know it's going to be me and one other person, but like at the max be like 4 people. And I know this space is going to be like in the upper upstairs, in the back left corner of the building. So I'm trying to keep it as private. There's going to be no signs or anything like that. I've already spoken with the City Black Club, and they seem to be cool with everything that I was going to be doing here. So I mean that's generally what I'm looking to do.
Okay, so you said you'll be open for appointments only, but what's the general like hours of operation you'll have?
So hours of operation, just roughly like anywhere from like noon to 8, and like by the time we get to 8 o'clock, it's probably just going to literally be me in the shop. So probably around noon to 8 is a good estimate of time.
And what days?
Oh, just Monday through Friday.
Okay. So you're starting off, you said it'll just be you, but you may increase the floor other artists.
I have me and one other person, but I'd
Okay.
like to be able to do at least 3 or 4 just for like for marketing purposes and everything, and so that the place makes a little bit of money, so that we can kind of all of my marketing is based online since we don't do any walk-ins and everything, but it just kind of helps get the reach out there.
All right, thank you. So I just want to get the location right. So you'll be like in the upper rear of the shuffleboard building?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just want to get my bearings right. Okay, great. Okay, city planning.
Madam Chair, last case of the year, I might point out. So, obviously the general, I think the public's perception of tattoo studios has changed in the last 40 to 50 years from when this zoning ordinance was originally written or updated. And because of that, we are actually, and we mentioned this before about some other things, we are actually proposing this Friday at the Planning Commission to discuss adding tattoo studios, small ones, exactly like what the applicant is proposing here, to be permitted in the local retail zoning district, because these are not high volume traffic. It's by appointment only. We think that this would be perfectly appropriate for a local retail type business in a local retail area. So we would definitely recommend approval for this project.
Great, thank you. Board, any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a question to the appellant. So I think from the map, site plan, it shows that folks can enter through the back and through the front of the building. I just want to confirm that that is in fact how entrance and ingress and egress happen here. And then there are no, second question, there are no future plans to make this not a appointment only studio space? Yes or no?
Yeah, no, there's no plans to make this a non-appointment only place. Also, I do plan on, for entrance, like it is like a key card entry, so I'll have to let each person in, and I'm planning on doing that through the rear. So.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, to Board Member Roca, if they were to expand, they would need another variance because they'd be expanding a non-conforming use. So it would come back before here if they wanted to expand it.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins, for clarifying.
Madam
Any other
Chair?
questions? Yes.
I was just going to say, hearing no other questions or comments, I was going to move with a motion. So we've heard testimony from the appellant, and the business will be by appointment only. Entry will be controlled by the owner or the employees. Hours will be noon to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. capacity will be 4 artists at full capacity. And it is located, as we see in the site plan, in the upper rear of the shuffleboard building. And planned access is through the rear entry. City planning approves this, and so I move that we go ahead and approve calendar number 22-195.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Board Member Roca seconds.
I have a second for Ms. Roca. Go ahead, call the roll.
Ms. Holzer,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Roca,
Yes.
Ms. Bates,
Yes.
Ms. Britt.
Yes.
Calendar number 22-195 is granted. It'll be ratified on January 3rd, and we will send the appellant a letter after that.
Great. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
All right, old business.
Good luck.
We got 1 through 4 and 6 and 7 without objection, board.
Without objection.
Without objection.
All right, great. Can I have an official adjournment? I need to go into executive session for a quick second.
Madam Chair, I move that we go into executive session.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I second. Board Member Holzer.
Holzer with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Holzer,
Yes.
Ms. Roca,
Yes.
Ms. Bates,
Yes.
and Ms. Britt.
Yes.
Okay,
Meeting
one
is
second
adjourned.
while I turn off the live stream.